Today's Thursday, November 12th, 2020. This is a special meeting of our Human Resources Organization to discuss possible personnel changes. Attending our commissioners Duncan, Brooks, and Filios. Do we have any changes to the agenda? No changes. Okay. I do have a request to move item, let me see, this is for our public defender to the final item on the agenda, if that's okay with Leslie and Bill. Are you okay with that?
Yep.
What item is that now?
7 and 8.
7 and 8. Those two items, Ann, 7 and 8? Okay, so 7 and 8 will be moved to the end. Okay, then. So we have potential action on some of these items. Let's start first with item number 1. Request for once-a-year budgeted stipend to Administrative Judge Specialty Court. Carlene, welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners. Carlene Behringer for the record. I am here today to request a $1,500 stipend to be paid to Kootenai County Deputy Clerk Kathy Booth. She is the judicial assistant for Administrative District Judge Rich Christensen, and this is a yearly bonus that goes to the deputy clerk that works with the ADJ at that time.
Yeah, this is the third one that this board's approved.
Correct.
Okay.
And it's budgeted.
Yes, it is budgeted.
I'm fine with
Okay.
it.
You're okay. Bill, you're okay? Motion.
I move that we approve the request for the once-year budgeted stipend to the administrative judge's
Deputy clerk.
deputy clerk. Thank you.
Or judicial assistant.
I second the motion. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, and the motion is carried. Thanks, Carlene. Thank you. Item number 2, adoption of reclassification for the tax accounting specialist, HR. Keith.
All right. Thank you. Oh, okay.
Okay, go right ahead,
Just
Sylvia.
in terms of like the protocol, so when a reclassification is done, what we do per policy 120 is,
You're not in the mic. Sorry.
Is it on?
It's,
Okay.
there you go.
there we
There
go.
you go.
Alrighty, okay. With reclassifications per policy 120, what we do is evaluate the job, and then we send it out to the elected officials for comment. We have had the turnaround time for that. So the recommendation is moving the tax auditing technician to a new job title of tax accounting specialist from a grade 7 to 9. We did look at it from the Hay method as well as internal alignment, and all of those factors were put into and market. So those were factored in, and our recommendation is a grade 9. And Keith, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'll just provide a little context on Keith Taylor for the record. I want to thank the board for considering regrading this position. The position is the tax accounting specialist position that is currently held by Joanne Connor. It is a non-exempt position and will remain a non-exempt position if you choose to upgrade it to a 9. Just to give an understanding of what the tax accounting specialist is doing for the county, it serves as the clerk and really the board's property tax expert, manages the levy and the certification process and the distribution of property tax and other shared revenue to more than 65 local governments within Kootenai County. As well, this position acts as the key liaison between the 65 local governments and the Idaho State Tax Commission as part of the certification process. So I know that Joanne's shown up in front of you in order to get your approval on all the underlying taxing districts before she pushes that onto the state. So just to give you a little history on why it was originally at a 7, this position was originally just clerical in nature. It really handled the month-end tax distribution, and it's really evolved over time into something that's, really very complex in dealing with Idaho state tax law, understanding that, being able to explain it to the underlying tax authorities that may or may not have, be a subject matter expert in that, all the way to, someone like the city of Coeur d'Alene that may, understand this in depth. So She works closely with the treasurer's office and the assessor's office in determining that levy and auditing that levy, and has to have a really in-depth communication to be able to work with the underlying tax levy. So it really.
So when is Joanne is retiring?
Joanne is retiring.
Effective
She will retire at the end of January.
the end of January, okay.
So anyway, thank you for your consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Sylvia, did you want to jump in?
No, we followed the policy and we do support it coming. We actually calculated it at a grade 9.
Okay, so you're making the adjustment while the change is, as the change goes into effect of the transition. And I don't want you to misinterpret the tone of my question, but why was this not done while Joanne was in position?
It's one of those things where we brought it before the clerk, and his understanding was with the salary wage study and everything else that we were to wait till after that. So that's why this got postponed.
Okay.
Well, in the wage, not the wage study, wrong thing. The job descriptions is going on right now.
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
So we don't have a budgetary impact yet, do we? Too soon for that? This is just a reclass.
This is the reclass. We do need to evaluate if, we have to at least make sure Joanne is at a minimum of a grade 9, so we can bring that back next round if necessary.
So yeah, this does have a budgetary impact if approved. There's an analysis there that shows that.
but that's for the next item. That's
For
for the
item
overlap.
number 3, for the overlap of
That,
training.
that's for the
Yeah,
overlap,
yeah,
is that correct?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Yes.
I would like to know if Joanne's at the minimum of the new grade, please.
Let me see.
Well, and I don't need to know it today.
Okay, yeah,
but
we'll
just-
check it.
She's at 90% of market.
So the next analysis shows her at 90% of market at the appropriate rate.
Okay. Okay, so the one we have right now?
Yeah.
Oh,
it does?
okay.
Okay.
Okay, so today we're basically approving the reclass, is that correct?
And then the next item will deal with overlap
The
and
overlap.
money.
Okay. Bill, questions? Motion?
I move that we adopt the reclassification of tax accounting specialist.
I second the motion.
Aye.
Aye, and the motion is carried for the reclassification. Thanks, Keith.
Well, and I'll answer your questions on the next item as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yep, item number 3, request for training overlap for the new tax accounting specialist due to employee retirement auditor. Once again, Keith, same situation. Go right ahead.
Okay, so just to give you some background on why we're asking for a minimum of 5 weeks of overlap, when Joanne originally came into this position, we trained her actually over a year, in order to step into this position. So we're asking for 5 weeks of overlap before her retirement in order to get her up to speed, or get her replacement up to speed on this position.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I'm hoping that you guys can get somebody to fill her shoes because she does have a gift. She's very good at what she does.
Okay, so basically the overlap cost is this 5756, is that correct?
Yes.
And, okay, but then the ongoing is the 8489?
Yep.
So the total impact this year is a little over $14,000. Where does the budget, is it budgeted, or do you have the money?
Would be an increase because we're increasing this position from a 7 to a 9. So we may be able to absorb some of that during the course of the year, but we will have to hire the new person at the new 9 rate.
Right, but then there's a chance that that person could be making less than what Joanne leaves at.
We won't know until we go and recruit.
Correct.
Internal candidate, it would be different than if we recruit, and then if we have an external candidate, you have that 2-month lag with medical insurance.
Right.
So it could shake itself out at this point, but
Right.
there's still some unknowns, but we know we do need to replace the position.
Right, and then typically clerk overall does have a savings every year, just because of turnover and stuff with,
Okay, so basically what we're looking at then is currently the loaded cost is 64,500, is that correct?
yes.
And so the new loaded or proposed loaded would be almost 73,000.
Yep.
Okay, and so, all right, you go right
I do have
ahead.
a comment. It looks like if the current person holding the job is at 90% of market at a 7 at $20.49, the minimum of a grade 9 is $21.66 per hour. So we will have to bring it forward to make an adjustment. But we can do that next week because we do have another HR meeting.
Sure.
So there
but-
will be some additional cost to it. Or you would move her actually to her same percent of market.
Right,
Yes.
From now until
Yes.
the end of her tenure, you would
Yes.
just move her to the next position at the same
Yes.
position that
Yes,
she's at.
yeah,
yes,
and,
yes.
And if you brought in a new person, then you
Yes.
would reevaluate that.
okay,
But we don't have that on the agenda for
Sure.
today.
yeah, you'll need to bring that
We'll bring it
back.
back next week.
Okay,
Yes, okay, awesome.
Okay, so fly that by me again. Okay. But let me ask the question a little differently. Is it a given that we have to bring the new individual in at the $73,000 loaded level? Okay,
That's only there because of Joanne's level
Mm-hmm.
in the position now. That's our known value.
fair enough. Okay, so, okay, but we're not going to pass on that today.
no, that's, it's not on the agenda.
It's not
It's not,
for a
no,
pay
uh-uh.
increase for her.
Okay,
Yeah,
No, it isn't on there.
All right,
So we'll bring it back next week with that calculation that's already on the spreadsheet.
understood.
Yep.
Okay,
Okay,
yep. So today we have to vote on the training overlap.
yes.
and that's the 5756.
Yes.
Okay, motion.
I move that we approve the request for training overlap for the new tax accounting specialist.
I second the motion. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, and the motion is carried. Moving on to item number 4, fiscal year 20 request for detective call-out pay sheriff. Captain Edmondson, welcome, Kim.
I am here, Commissioners, Kim Edmondson for the record, to request that you consider call-out pay for the detectives. We presented that in the FY20 planning, and it was approved. And in FY20, we used that call-out pay to have detectives respond and have someone assigned for those responses during the year. We found it to be very effective. We had responses to calls sometimes before even having needed to call on a detective to respond to a scene. In FY21, we approached the board again to approve that call-out pay, and it was not included in the FY21 planning. And so we've looked at the budget, and through some realignment of responsibilities, we've considered line item 7005, salaries for temporary and seasonal employees, and that line item has $55,902 in it right now. We believe that we'll be able to take the $10,726 needed to fund the call-out pay for the detectives out of that line item without any negative effect, so there's no impact to our budget. And I'm here today to ask that you consider us realigning that budgeted amount to a different purpose.
Thoughts?
I'm against it probably on 3 or 4 different levels. Number one, it was not approved in the 21 budget. Number two, there are 10 departments that I identified off the top of my head who could use call-out pay based on the same criteria. Our call-out policy says that it's not for non-exempt employees because they, number one, it's in their job description. Number two, they get paid for all the time that they're out. So to offer above and beyond, I don't have money anywhere to also compensate those 10 departments who also have call-out duties, which are also spelled out in their job descriptions. So I can't support it.
Bill?
I agree, and moreover, I guess when something that specific is brought up, and the Board of Commissioners that specifically says no, then it's not a matter of, it's yes if we can move it around from someplace else. So I'm against it.
Yeah, I understand. And respectfully, I would like you to consider that when these things were denied during the budget process, we were advised it was because of COVID and not knowing where the budget was ultimately going to end up, not because of the principle of the call-out pay necessarily. So in fairness, I'm just asking you to consider that. It's also very quickly becoming a norm, not just in our field, but in other fields. Coeur d'Alene Police Department does use call-out pay significantly higher than what we're requesting, as does Kootenai Health in the private sector. So this is something that we are seeing added on to, you know, the regular pay and the responsibilities of people who are required to be on call, and we just ask that you consider that as well.
I've been against on-call pay from the beginning. I haven't approved it any year that we've been there. And then as far as other agencies goes, we just can't be competitive in every other agency, every realm with everything. So while I do appreciate that, it's the struggle of being for the county. Counties just don't make as much as municipalities. It's impossible for us to keep up as much as we want to try.
Yeah, I guess for the reasons stated, I have to oppose it as well, but I think it's something worthwhile potentially in fiscal '22.
Yeah, you bring it
But
back on 22,
Yeah,
and I would be in favor of it.
yeah. I think more so that I think is the principle of if something is denied and then finding money in another bucket and bringing it forward doesn't really sit well with me. I understand the need, and I think I'm willing to look at it again for fiscal '22, but not for this fiscal year.
So then we'll have to change our on-call policy within
That's true. We might have to do that, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm against that.
And if I may also interject this thought that 55,902, when we're looking at realigning those purposes, not coming here just to say that we found it in another pocket, in that reevaluation, we're considering those funds to be used in another place that we'll come to you in the future with, in just that reallocation. So it's, and for something that wasn't requested in the budget at all, but we've just found some other needs and find this specifically to be one that we'd like to utilize for the benefit of the community, the quicker response to crime, you know, so that detectives are on scene for an investigation, and for just the effectiveness of being able to get hold of somebody that is required to be prepared for call-outs in such a significant situation, which is probably different than a lot of the other areas that are, you know, had requested for call-out pay.
Actually, some of them are the exact same. And then I would also say, how much do detectives make? What is their bump in pay per hour when they become detectives?
Yeah, it's $2.25, I believe, for the stipend.
Okay, so they do get a bump to going to detectives.
Yes.
Yep.
As do
about 4,000 to
detectives and other
5,000 a year.
agencies that
Yeah.
also have the call-out pay, but thank you.
Sure.
Sylvia, any thoughts?
No.
Thanks.
It's a board budget.
It's a board decision. I think you
Yes.
have your decision, Kim. I don't think it's going to
Thank
happen
you.
this year.
Okay. Very
But
good, thank you.
Thank you anyway. All right. We don't need a motion here, do we? I don't think so. Okay. Moving on to item number 5, adoption of reclassification, deputy building official HR. Sylvia?
Similar to the last one we handled on the tax accounting specialist, we have sent, per policy 120, the potential reclassification of senior building inspector to deputy building official from a grade 10 to 11 to all elected officials. We received no comments. So at this point, it would be a request on the board to adopt that reclassification.
Okay. And this is the situation that confronted us a couple of weeks ago, that we
Yeah.
intervened to prevent the exodus of an individual.
Yes, you did
Among
handle
other
the
things.
pay
Okay.
related to that earlier.
I'm fine with it. Leslie?
Yep.
Bill? Motion?
I move that we adopt the reclassification of deputy building official.
I second the motion. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Item number 6, request to research and review planning and building inspection position salary, and market ranges, community development. Sylvia or David?
David?
Commissioners, I have a handout that speaks more directly than I can.
Thank you.
These are three staff that were highly regarded. Michael, you see, left 3 years ago. He's now making nearly what I make. The next person down, Laura, has been gone less than a year. She got nearly an 8% raise to go to work for Post Falls. And Jennifer got a 10% raise for a lesser position in Spokane Valley. These are just three examples. I think I could pull up quite a few more. It's, to me, the real issue here is not necessarily market numbers. I trust our HR staff. I know they've done their homework. But something is still amiss when these groups with which we must compete can offer so much more. And so I'm hoping that we can find out what that something is through a further study.
Sure. And my understanding, and Sylvia, you can jump in here, is that we went pretty conservative because that department in particular was the highest below market according to the study. And so we didn't quite make that full leap. So I'm fine with the review and looking forward. I really want to see your new fee schedule before we address any wage increases at this point.
That's reasonable. David,
That's it.
reasonable?
Yes, sir.
Sylvia?
So just a couple questions. What I'm interpreting that is go back, look at what BDPA gave us, which I put a spreadsheet in your folders for you, and see where we plotted the positions within the grades, then work to potential proposal for an adjustment if we see something is necessary, and do some costing of that, if that would be appropriate, or do you just want next round in a couple weeks to see just what that looks like?
I mean, the more analysis, the better, and hopefully the fee increase will come within that time period.
Yep, I think it's the former that you mentioned. I agree with Leslie. Take it to its fullest extent. In other words, this is what it's going to cost, kind of a thing, and then we can weigh that against what David is contemplating for fee increases.
Yeah, with
Fair
a
enough?
23% turnover rate, I think this is one of those cases
There
where
you
it has
go.
to be adjusted.
Bill? You're nodding.
Oh, I agree.
Okay.
And I will state that we did take a conservative approach on this because it's much easier to move a grade up than say, oh, we overpaid, we're overpaying and bring it back down. And it does look like that's the situation specifically with our planners at this point.
Okay, so I don't know if we need a motion or you just need direction.
Just direction?
Just direction.
Okay,
Yep.
so you're fine. Thank you. Thank you, David. Okay, so Ann, we moved 7 and 8 to the end, is that correct? Okay. So item number 9, adoption of reclassifications, veteran services position, also known as VSO. HR, Sylvia, please?
Yes, yes. Same as the other two we've done. Based on policy 600, I've been saying 120, that's compensation.
Right.
That's stuck in my head. 600, we did send it to the elected officials on the initial grading that HR is proposing. And so that includes for the Veteran Services Officer from a grade 9 to a grade 10. The Veteran Services Officer Assistant would have a title change to Administrative Assistant from a grade 4 to a 6, which is in line with all other administrative assistants. So before you would be the approval for the reclassifications at this point.
And Sylvia, going forward, are you guys able to maybe do some future projecting as far as, so we don't have to do this outside of budget? Just say, okay, these are the reclassifications that we know are coming forward, and maybe we can adjust for that in FY22. So I'm just really concerned with the changes that, and this is not to you,
Absolutely.
I'm concerned with the changes that the legislators are making and the amount of out-of-budget increases that we're approving, which are legitimate, that we're already going to be dead in the water by the time FY22 comes. So
When we started the job description project, there was that rationale that if there was a change in reclassification, it would come up with at the next budget cycle. But there's unique situations that have occurred that have
Sure.
have required us to bring them forward mid-cycle.
Well, and the whole tax accounting specialist, that's one of
Right.
them. You can't hire somebody at an old job description because they're getting hired right now for this new job description. So, yeah, those kinds of things I understand. So I just wanted to make that point. If we can get any of them for the next cycle, that would be great, or project. So,
How many
Yes,
employees
okay.
do we have?
There are about 850 employees.
And how many of these have been brought?
In terms of the job description project, this is probably maybe our 5th or 6th one.
So it's not like it's,
It actually, what's been nice about the job description, because there was concern with the wage study and the job descriptions weren't accurate, they really have been pretty accurate, and it's just cleaning them up,
so
that it hasn't
to miss the mark
required.
here or there is not indicating that there's a major problem. I don't
no,
like
not at all.
out of budget year
Yeah,
monkey business, I'll call it.
right,
But
right.
sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do.
Right, and this, the majority of the job descriptions, as I was saying, have not required reclassification, which is great, which gives, helps us with, the information we had for the wage study was accurate.
So when you
There's
say,
just some couple weird,
when you
unique
answered Bill's
ones.
question about 5 or 6, are you referring to this fiscal year or over the prior fiscal year?
Prior fiscal year that were adopted for this fiscal year, and the 3 that have just come before us. I mean, we weren't anticipating the community development one, but some reorganizations are happening that are requiring us to revisit them as they're, redesigning their structures and stuff. So it's pretty much odd
Sometimes,
situations,
Okay.
unique situations.
sometimes you also just plain miss the mark. I mean, there's no Hayes system or this system or that policy that covers every single one to
Right.
the T.
Right, you try internal alignment, market, hey,
Do
and
the best you
sometimes you
can.
have to, if you can't retain someone and you can't recruit them, then you need to revisit it.
right. Yeah, so
Even
there's
though it
always
made
those things that
sense,
need to
right?
come.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it does
Well,
make
and
sense,
then-
but
and
you never know until you put someone somewhere and then
Yep.
you see what happens with the market.
And then the problem is, when you do lose and you have to hire, and potentially have to hire at a higher salary, number one, and number two, then that raises the compression issue, which then presents another problem, and that's why I think we need a matrix, but that's a whole nother study.
And it is typical that when someone leaves a position and moves on to another position, they make about 10% more.
Yeah,
That's why, part of the reason they go.
people leave. Yeah.
And management and our structure and those sort of things.
Okay, then, so,
I'm fine with the reclassification.
okay. So we're good then? Just direction?
No, not direction.
On the
We need
VSO,
to
we
vote.
need to,
Yep. I move that we adopt the reclassifications of both veteran services positions.
I second the motion. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, and the motion is carried for the reclassification of the 2 veterans' positions. Okay. All right then, so moving on to
Wait a minute.
This is the
Number
pay.
10
This is
now.
number 10, the
number
pay
10.
that goes
Right,
with the
go ahead.
reclassification.
Go right ahead.
Why are you standing up?
All the other ones stood up, so I figured you were
Oh.
calling me
No.
up. I anticipated you
I
calling
thought you,
me.
I thought you had a cramp in your leg, okay?
No, I anticipated you
Okay,
were gonna
all
call me
right.
up like you're.
And that's where I was going when I said
Okay.
next. Yeah, okay, go ahead. This is the pay increase. Go ahead.
I wanted to talk about this because if we have I don't want to denigrate any position, but if we have a clerk typist or someone who performs that sort of a clerical function, and we have those people across the different departments of the county, and we have we know what it costs to put somebody in those positions, and we know what it takes to keep them in the positions, and it's relatively easy. When we have a unique position or positions, it's much harder to divine what market is. And I think a veteran service officer is an excellent example of something that is very difficult. And so we look across, And you can't just look across Kootenai County. It's like looking for an airport director. You can't find any. There are none. We have no veteran service officers in Kootenai County. I think Spokane has one. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. How many?
Honor.
5, including their director.
Okay.
They also have 40,000
Veterans.
veterans, 40-plus thousand.
And so we've been, in my opinion, fortunate enough to get Tom on with 30 years of experience in the Marine, 30 years of experience. And in addition to that, a real commitment to what he's doing. I mean, sometimes, in my opinion, too much of a commitment to what he's doing, because he takes it home with him every evening, every weekend, and it's, if not uppermost in his mind all the time, it's close to it. And it's also, it's a very technical position. Before I decided to become a county commissioner, I was actually applying to be a veteran service officer. And the absolute, it's like being a mini attorney in a very small area of the law, and it has to do with VA. You don't find many attorneys, I know of none, honestly, myself, in Kootenai County who will handle veterans issues. And the reason is because it's such a specialized area. And when you make a mistake, the VA doesn't say, oh, you can't submit that. There's a mistake on that. They take it, they run with it, they process it, and it takes a year to 2 years, and then they kick it back, or sometimes they deny it just because the wrong box was checked on page 6, item such and so. You have to know the Federal Register, you have to know the law. So it's not simply a paper shuffler or even an advocate. This person is giving people paralegal advice to fill out forms for a very unforgiving agency. And we're lucky enough to have Tom doing this, and he has really stepped up. We had, and I won't go into it, but we had a very unfortunate circumstance a few years ago where a veteran lost almost $30,000 because a claim was mishandled. These are real dollars to real people. We have 16,000, is that right? Approximately 16,000 veterans in Kootenai County. And those people, most of them have a spouse. So we're talking 25 to 30,000 people in Kootenai County that depend on our Veteran Service Office to kind of pre-flight their claims and lead them in the right direction. And sometimes in real bad situations, a widow comes in, and you've had this how many times? How many times last week? 5. How many times a week before? This happens, and it's not the kind of time when you say, well, Mrs. Smith, what do you want to do? The Veteran Service Officer have tremendous compassion and knowledge to help the widow or widower get the best outcome from the Veterans Administration. We
Okay.
This is very important.
No, I know it is.
This involves about 30,000 people in the county.
Well, we make decisions that sometimes affect 160,000 people.
Well, okay. You'll have, the board will have its chance. You can say no. And my problem is that if we lose Tom or Terry, I'll just use their first names, because of a pay inequity, it would be a real travesty, and it would be sad and very difficult for us to replace them.
Okay, fair enough. So let's go to the pay inequity.
Okay,
Okay, go ahead.
Well-
Sylvia, is it you or Bill who wants to speak?
you go ahead.
Do you want me to
Sure.
tell you what we've provided
Yep.
for you? So typically what happens is with the reclassification, we put them at the same percent of market as what they were in their old grade, okay? So in terms of the Veteran Services Officer, we did provide you with 3 different calculations. At the current percentage of market, which is 81.83, at 95% of market, and at 100% of market. And then with the administrative assistant, we did leave that just at the current percent of market at 96.91% of market because it was so high for time and service, because we gave her credit for her when we brought her on for her experience. So we left that one at that level. So annual increase, which is first scenario, at current levels, it would be an increase of budget of $11,760.
Or,
For the Veteran Services Officer at his current percent of market and the administrative
let's
assistant.
break them out individually.
Okay, yes, all righty. So for the Veteran Services Officer at its current level of pay, current level of market, the increase would be $4,366. If you move the Veteran Services Officer to 95% of market, the effect on budget is $13,828. If you brought that position to the new grade at 100% of market, it would be $17,421. That's for the Veteran Services Officer. Do you want to have
well-
that discussion?
Yeah, well, I want to
First.
say something. Just a moment. If you believe that he's worth 81%, is that what it was, 81% he was brought on at?
He originally, so when he was hired, he was brought in at 95% of market, but with the wage study, that changed everything. People did not stay at the percentage of market that they were when they were hired.
And what was the rationale for reducing that?
Because of
in
the.
his situation.
Yes, we did it based on time and position, consistent countywide. So his time and position at that time probably was under a year. So at that time, he received a 2% increase like the majority of the staff did.
So you're saying his initial hiring was appropriate at 81%?
His initial hiring was at 95%
Right.
of market,
But then
yes.
when we did our,
When we did the wage
we
study.
dropped him back to
he-
81%.
Yes, but he never lost salary.
No, he just lost,
Right, but so did almost 800 and some people, except for the sheriff's office.
except for what?
The
Sheriff's
200 and
office,
some
but that's,
that are on the sworn officer
different animal.
matrix.
I just,
So,
so the new salary would be $4,000 more than he's making now?
it's whatever the board, that's why I gave you
I know,
guys
but that's what-
options.
So basically, all right, let's get down to the bottom line here. So we have 45,152, which is his current salary, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. And at 81.83% of market, he's at 48.7.
yes.
So he gets a $3,600 a year increase, which is about $300 a month. If we go to 95% of market, he gets a jump of about $11,500. Okay. Let me understand this. Go back to what you were saying. Hold on a second, Tom. Go back to what you were saying earlier. When we did the wage study, go ahead.
Okay.
He was at 8. Say what you were saying before.
Okay, when we did the wage study, when Tom was hired, he was brought in at 95% of market. So with the wage study, we raised
shifted.
the ranges.
So
I
he
mean,
dropped down to 80.
So it then became 81% of their market. But this happened to all employees pretty much. Perfect example, I'll just use myself, came in at market, now I'm at 80-some% of market. So it's consistent, it's countywide consistent. Because, but they don't lose, no one lost their salary. So then when we did the wage study, we said the rationale methodology we're going to use is time and position. So then that determined where you moved in the scale. So in this situation, a 2% increase was awarded from when he was hired for the wage study in fiscal year 20. Then in fiscal year 21, we all got a COLA.
Okay.
So that's just kind of how it works. With the wage study, it's going to mess up what percentage of market you're at unless you guys direct us to do that, which
Well, the thing is,
costly.
if we're going to be consistent with what's happened with everybody else, okay, I don't have a problem going the single step to 48,773. I think beyond that is a giant leap, and that's something I think that's going to send repercussions throughout the county.
Correct. I absolutely support moving to the same position in the new market, in the new grade. Yeah, because we just did that for 2 other positions, so we can't start now doing something different.
Unless we have an obvious inequity. And in this situation, if you lose that position, lose that person in that position.
We could say that about every single
Okay,
position.
Leslie, please let me finish. You know, I know you've got commentary. You always do. Let me finish.
Bill, stop, come on.
Hey.
No, make your point. Go ahead.
I'm
Bill.
trying to, but if people would stop interrupting, I would be able to.
I don't think she's interrupting you. She's
Oh,
making-
well, let's just slightly
Bill, come
lecture
on,
us
go ahead,
here.
make your point.
I was making it, Chris.
Go right ahead.
You think this is funny? About 30,000 people in this county losing effective representation?
Not at all. I haven't had Tom call me and say, if I don't get a raise, I'm quitting. I don't know any other aspect except we're dealing with what we need to deal with in a logical and manner that is not going to cause inequity throughout the county. We have a lot of these. We do have the airport. We do have community development. We do have adult misdemeanor probation. Losing any of those department heads would be devastating countywide. So I get it. I like Tom. I'm glad he's here. He took the job knowing what the salary was, and we've been able to give him increases, and that's great. And so based on the reclassification, I think moving him to the 4,000 increase is appropriate and consistent with every other position that we've addressed.
I don't think that's the case. And I think if we lose him, I mean, there's a number of positions in the county that particular people would just as soon see go away. And when they go away, this county's going to be in a world of hurt. And this is one of them. And I think sometimes we have to step out of policy 600, policy 120. We have to look around us more than Kootenai County and even Spokane County. And if that were done, you would see that Astoria, Oregon starts their person at $65,000 for the same position with, 3,000 veterans? 4,000? Just tell me.
Yeah, it's 55 to 65 starting salary with 3,900 veterans in the county. With no experience, 55 to 65.
But Tom, you'd also have to relocate. Okay, why don't you wanted to speak, so come forward.
So, thank you, and I appreciate it, and apologize, this is a contentious issue between the 3 of you, but yes, I spoke, the reason why this all started coming up is because the county's growing very fast. The needs of this population group that has been brought up is increasing. So the larger the population, the more of those percent, or the higher amount of those people require a higher level of attention and assistance. So the position has grown quite a bit over the last couple of years, and is continuing to grow. But for county service officers, and this is from the president of the National County Service Officers Association in the United States, that for our size, for our county, service officers make between $55,000 and $65,000 a year, starting off with no experience. Okay, I've sent several examples. Montana just opened up; they started at $65,000, and next door for a position with no experience necessary in Montana. I forwarded all that information up. I realize we have constraints. We're not Montana. We're not Oregon. I understand that. But additionally, do you commissioners know how much money my office brought into the county this last year, just in compensation and pension benefits alone?
When you say brought in,
Brought into the county, not necessarily into the county's budget, but how much the VA gave veterans
okay.
money that live in this county, gave them money to spend in this county. VA expenditures, just on compensation and
No,
pension.
I have no idea. Go ahead.
$74 million. That is a direct product of our office. Total VA expenditures in Kootenai County, and I can show you the statistics, and I have my report here that it's under review, it's in draft. I'm welcome to give you a copy here now. It has a lot of these numbers in here. We brought in, the VA itself brought in sent into this county, $139 million over this last year. That's up from $124 million the year before. So, and we had a 17% increase in compensation and pension, is which the majority of the work that we do out of our office, $74 million is what came into the county. So along with, you know, navigating everything else, we navigate law, we are also pseudo-social workers. You know, you don't know how many widows that I have assisted over the last year that have called and said, thank you for saving me so I didn't get thrown out of my house. That's because we were able to navigate the law and get them the benefit that they needed so they could stay in their house.
No, and Tom, I don't mean to cut you off, not
Yep.
at all, and I understand that. When we embarked on the wage study, Phase 1, which was implemented in fiscal year '20, we had people, some were substantially underpaid. We had a planner underpaid by 40%. When I look at a planner, that's not a job that somebody can just walk into. Usually, these are people that major in urban planning. We have one person who works for us, and man, I hope we can keep him, who's got a master's in urban planning from Berkeley, which is one of the top schools. And so we have to weigh all these things. And no, they probably don't bring in $70 million worth of business. But when you look at the level of business that they impact, when you look at new construction, it's probably in the hundreds of millions, maybe even exceeding $1 billion. So your point is valid. I understand it. I'm willing to take a second look at it, but I can't go 11 grand right now. That's a tough nut to bite. And you know, that's a very, I didn't calculate the percentage. I could probably do it quickly in my head. You'd be looking at a probably better than about a 25% increase in pay. And I understand the argument, and maybe what we do is we go the first step now and revisit it again in 5 or 6 months. What do you think, Sylvia? You have any thoughts?
No, it really is the board's decision on where you want to place the position. You know, I just had to share what you guys have been doing in the past because it's all about consistency and so forth. But really, it's a philosophical practice of the board of where you want to take this. And if you go outside that 81.83, you justify it and you're good. If you vote on it, you do it. If not, you at least give them, for consistency's sake, 81.83% of the new grade.
Yeah,
at
absolutely.
least.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I would like to
There's no issue
see
there.
that
Yeah.
you get another
No
position.
issue there.
Right. I'd like to see you get another position, which you asked for this year, and, you know, it ended up getting cut for wages instead of, you know, additional bodies. But I would like to see you do that so you are able to effectively serve more people. And in that case, I would probably require a little bit more reclassification and, you know, you'd be supervising a second person too. So that will affect your job.
When we say pay grade 10, is that what we're looking at here?
Yes, from a grade 9 to a grade 10.
So at the 48,773 level, where does that put him in grade 10? Is it at 81.3?
81.83%.
Okay, so
Yes.
basically, I understand Tom's argument, but I can't look at this as just VSO and just Tom. I think back to Sylvia's point, I got to look across the spectrum. And if this is the situation with everybody else, then that's the situation we have here. And as much as I struggle to be fair about it, I think the fair thing to do is, in fact, to say, is this consistent with the way we're compensating everybody else? I don't have any other way to approach
What you've done with
it.
job evaluations, we would have loved in the wage study to be able to give credit for experience, but there was no way to factor that in. And not all offices use comp policy 120, now it's relevant this time, and bring people in anywhere above minimum to 95%, or if there's extenuating circumstances to market or whatever. We would have loved to be able to say with the wage study, okay, so Tom is at 95% of market. In the new study, let's put him at 95% of market. If that's something you would like for us to look back at, and as we're creating the step and grade system, we would be more than happy to do calculations. But you'd have to give us that direction that that's what you want, and we can cost it out, definitely. But the majority of staff did take a decline in their percent of market with the wage study. Because we use time in position, which time in position, if you were here 1 year, but you got brought in at 95% of market, was giving you credit at least for 5 years of service, 5 years of experience. So that's where that difference is.
And time and current
Yes.
position.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I just have a quick question. So
go right ahead.
if VSO is processing claims of millions of dollars, wouldn't it make sense to have somebody with accounting background working in that office? That's an awful lot of money to process.
No, I think what
It's
Tom
not
is referring
cash
to is the money that the VA pays out to the veterans.
Mm-hmm.
That could be pension, it could be medical benefits. Go ahead,
Right,
Tom.
right, yes, yeah. So I don't handle that money directly. We get those benefits and it's paid directly to the veteran or the veteran's family member.
You're advising veterans on how to use the VA system?
Oh, I'm doing more than advising. I'm submitting their claims and working them for them using the law. Yeah, I'm processing claims utilizing the law that is before us.
To get them the benefits
To
they
get them the
deserve.
benefits.
Yeah, and are
Rather,
eligible for.
rather than a financial person, it would be better to have somebody who has a legal background, like a paralegal.
Yeah, we follow US code to submit these claims. And we're accredited to do
So is there a request, I guess I heard something for the first time, is there a request for a third individual in the office? Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Not now before us, but in the FY '21
if it's-
budget.
That was
it was asked
withdrawn
for.
in light of the
Okay.
budget
okay.
problems that we were having.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with the, going up to 48,773. And I think maybe we can take another look at it later. This wasn't budgeted, was it?
No,
Leslie, you still feel the same way?
Yeah, because it's consistent with what we've done, and if we do something different, then people who were treated differently can come back and cause an issue. Darren, do you have any response?
Yeah, I agree with Sylvia. It's a board decision, board discretion. Our recommendation, both Sylvia and I, are try to treat everyone equally, because you do end up, if you don't, those unintended disparate impact cases seem to just pop up. So that's our recommendation. Treat everyone the same.
Okay. I think we've hammered it around enough, and we haven't gone into the second one yet, right? So we're going to deal with both in a single motion?
We can, or if you
Yeah,
want to separate.
let's take up,
so for the.
Go ahead.
Admin assistant, what, the projection you have, the position is currently at 96.91% of market. So you take them from the grade 4 to the grade 6 at 96.91% of market. And so that cost is loaded $7,395.
What we do need to come back with, though, is,
yeah,
what do you call it, compression issues.
For all employees?
Well,
Or-
in this particular situation,
You don't have a compression issue?
you won't have a compression
Because there's
issue
so
here.
many grades
Oh, okay.
separated. The
Yeah.
compression issue would be.
you won't have a compression issue here.
Time and service within the same classifications. So
Okay.
the same grade 9, same grade 10
Gotcha.
sort of thing. Looking at that, yes.
You know, this is interesting. So Tom is at 81.83% of market, and Terry would be at 96 point. When you start, if we go to a matrix, this measure of percent of market, I think, needs to go. I think it's really hurting us. I don't know where it came from, but leave it for now. I guess it's a monumental task. But in any case, here we have one individual at 81%, the other one's at 96%, so we feel we have to keep her at 96%. Never mind. Let's leave it at that. Any thoughts?
Only he's got a hell of a lot more experience doing this than she does. She he doesn't have any more commitment to this than she does. But this just flies in the face of reason.
So what are you suggesting, Bill?
I'm suggesting 95%, but I don't hear any support for that. I just would ask you to please hang around with us and let us work this out over some time.
So that's it? So that's the consistency, and that's the opinion of legal as well. Okay, then, so motion.
I move that we approve the pay increases due to reclassification for both veteran service positions.
I second the motion. No.
Aye.
I'm going to see if I can amend the motion for a moment here. I'm not willing to go to 56. I won't do it. I just think I understand the argument, Tom, and this is not a reflection of you, but I also have to worry about the other 800 employees. I'm willing to go a little bit higher, but not to the 56. Leslie, would you go to 50?
No, to me, that's kind of arbitrary picking a number, and it's going to cause disparate impact with the people who have already been treated the same way. They had a reclassification, then they came forth, and they're same percentage in market. So I can't support that at this time. There's some other things that I'm going to look at with this, but I can't do that right now.
So Sylvia, let me ask you a question, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot. When would it be reasonable, if it's reasonable at all, to take a second look at this? Ahead of, let's say, fiscal '22.
Maybe you can look at where you stand in your budget overall, and Bill brings it back as consideration. But when you open those kind of doors, you open the door.
For
And others will
everyone, every
probably want to
department.
come forward with
Which is
any
precisely
salary
the
savings
concern.
there may be. You know, I would love to see everyone get their same percent of market. That would, I think I've told Bill, give me a blank check and we can fix this pay issue that you guys adopted when you came on board, but it isn't that easy, of course.
I think it all begins in proper classifications to begin with.
Right.
And I think we've missed the mark a lot. And I would be willing to do the 50 and feel good about it for now.
Darren?
Commissioners, if that's what you want to do, you would need to announce a new motion for the new amount.
Leslie makes a valid argument. It's the consistency, you know, and we try to keep that consistency. Otherwise, you know, we run a. But Tom also brings up a valid argument, because when you do look at the market, it's actually way above where he's at right now. So if you go to 50, basically we're adding another $1,300.
I'll just clarify that. When
Go
we
right ahead.
looked at market, where we have it is within its market. It's just they're either, these other communities are starting higher within their pay philosophies, or they have the positions graded differently. But the BDPA survey, because I did pull it and look at it, because that's important to us when we're doing this reclassification and the internal equity, we did look at it, and from there, we did have it at market, just for clarification purposes.
Okay.
But remember, we used Spokane, State of Washington, State of Idaho, local municipalities, Idaho Falls, Bonneville, Bonner, Canyon County.
So when we look at Oregon, that's not really part of the study.
No, it hasn't been, it was not in our market study. So I appreciated getting all that information from Tom, but he'd always get that comment back for me that, you know, that wasn't our market unless the board directs me to go outside the initial wage study market. We stay within that area. And, you know, that's something we need to consider for the next wage study, where we're going to go with it, what will be our market.
Okay.
And around the country, it has a lot to do with the size of the market and the amount of VSOs and in that market as well. In Ohio, I provided her a bunch of information.
He did.
I realized a lot of this was outside the market. In Ohio, it's part of their code, you know. So for a county for our size, with our amount of veterans in our county, the starting position is $55,000 for a starting position with no experience. Same with the Oregon County that I sent them. There's no experience. The range for no experience, 55 to 65K for a county with 3,900 veterans.
Okay, so basically what we would have to do is if we go above the 81.3, from my perspective, what we're really saying here is that the BDPA study is essentially flawed.
No, you're not saying it's flawed. You're paying, you would still be paying that position within
range.
its range. So you could do that if you want to. It's really your decision of what you set his pay at.
It's just hard when we have somebody like an airport director, good example. There aren't a lot of airport directors in Kootenai County. You really have to go out and look at the nationwide basket of airport directors that you might get who might be interested in a county our size. And we're paying that guy a lot of money, but it's not out of line with what they make. And they're very difficult to replace.
That is true. Okay, well, I think we've labored over this long enough. I'll tell you what, I'm willing to go to 50, but I will not entertain another request for VSO before fiscal '22. I'd like to make that motion, I will second it, but please understand that's where I'm coming from. And Tom, I'm not saying you're not worth more. I'm simply saying I have to think of the universe. I think Leslie's arguments are right on. I don't know that we can ever achieve full parity and do entirely what's right, but do you want to make that motion, Bill?
Yeah, I'd make that motion that we raise the veteran service officer's salary to 50. And that the next time we entertain this for a reclassification or, you know, another look at by Human Resources, we do it during the next regular budget session. Is that?
Yeah, that's fine. Can we? Yeah, you can go on to the assistant, part 2.
Oh, and the assistant one, I have no problem with that. I think she's demonstrated her, if I'm not mistaken, abilities, and she's much more than a clerk.
So basically, but in the motion, you want to refer to the number?
No, you can. What is it?
Current
Okay, so-
percent of market. Same current
The same
percent of market.
percentage of
same-
market, okay, so that's
new
part
grade.
2 of the motion,
Yeah,
all right.
she's doing a great job. And
Gina, are you okay with that?
I'm gonna have to do a lot of crafting when I do the minutes.
Okay, so we've got the math right here, okay. All right, then?
Bill Brooks?
I,
Oh, wait, who seconded?
oh,
Oh, I'll
you made it, or I made it. I guess you seconded. Or
I'll second the motion.
Leslie can. I,
Nay.
Aye, and the motion is carried. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
It's not personal, you know that, Tom.
No, I know that, and I know you all have a hard job, so I respect what you do, all three of you. And like I said, it's not good to be here when it's very contentious between all three of you, but I do understand, you know, what you all are trying to do. You're trying to look out for the county as a whole, but I am as well. So, and I think everybody made good arguments, and it was a difficult decision for all three of you, so I recognize that.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Okay. Oh, goodness. Okay, so we're going on to item 11. Hopefully this will be quick. Correction to grade for airport heavy equipment mechanic HR. Sylvia?
Yes, so back when we were doing job descriptions, solid waste also had a heavy equipment mechanic, and it was adopted at a grade 8. And one of the things in our wage study we wanted to do consistently is have, if they're doing the same job, they're at the same grade. Well, we did not bring the one for the airport forward. It fell through the cracks. My apologies on that. So what we are proposing that all heavy equipment mechanics be raised from a 7 to 8, and the airport one was the last one. So we have them in solid waste, parks and waterways, and the airport. So it's really a cleanup of our classification system of our positions.
Okay. So do you need a motion here? Or
Yes,
just?
yeah, please.
I move that we adopt the correction to grade for the airport heavy equipment mechanic.
I second the motion. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, and the motion is carried. Okay, item number 12, requirements on processing adverse employment actions.
Okay.
Sylvia?
This deals with the October 1st policy change with iCrimp. And Darren, do you want to talk about the latest information we got from iCrimp?
Yeah, Sylvia. So our policy with iCrimp describes that iCrimp's supposed to approve any employment action. However, their practice has changed. So now they're only asking that iCrimp approve terminations. They're still taking a long time. It's a lot of extra work. I think it's part of just the growing pains, but right now it really hasn't been helpful. It's been more frustrating than anything. But yeah, that was it. Sylvia, anything else you can think of?
Yeah. So what we would need to do is have the Board of County Commissioners reissue the requirements for processing adverse employment actions, because in the document you signed as of October 6th, it indicated adverse employment decisions include termination, discipline. We just need to say termination.
Termination and
Let's go
remove
through
discipline?
go through this whole process. And then departments, of course, we always encourage them to engage with HR and legal if they're taking if they're doing demotions or suspensions with pay, but that would not be a requirement under the iCrimp
Fair enough.
practices anymore. So I'll work with Nancy, send a memo, you guys can sign it, and then we can reissue it.
Yeah, so we'll just do a business meeting, sign it at the business meeting.
Okay, so do we need a motion to remove that language?
No, we'll just bring it forward
Okay.
for the business
At
meeting.
business meeting. Sylvia, is it, I want to get on with Ann's, who's been waiting patiently. Can we defer item 13 to a future date?
Do you
To
want
next
to bring
week?
it
We
next
could do it
week?
next, we have the,
HR, we have an HR
We
meeting
have
next
one.
we
week.
do?
On
Yes.
Thursday at
And
11.
we also have the legislative luncheon.
Oh,
I just want to make sure we don't run into that. Do we have enough time?
Let's see.
The 19th. Today's the 12th.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's different. This one is with the legislators.
no, the legislative luncheon with us is on Tuesday.
Oh, so it's-
Department heads is on Friday, so
No,
the
we're good then,
Panhandle
we're good.
Health one is on Thursday.
or if you want us to bring it at the next HR meeting in December, we can.
Can we do that?
Sure.
Well, I mean,
You're
we already have an
comfortable
HR
with it?
meeting next week. I
All
don't
right, so
know why
put
we
it on.
can't.
If we can do
Okay.
it, we can do it.
Okay.
That works, okay. So that's deferred to the 19th. I don't know why I thought it was the 19th for our meeting, okay. Ann, thank you for your patience. Okay, so we're going to start, we're hearkening back to item 8, 2020 position movements and salaries, public defender. I don't know that we'll need executive session, so why don't you start us off?
Item number 7, I think that's going to be the easier of the two.
Go right ahead.
Item number 7 is requesting for BOCC approval for 2 grant-funded positions this year. They're workload positions. One is a half-time attorney position. As you will recall, last year, the workload funding from the Public Defense Commission gave us 8.5 attorney positions. This year, they've given us a half position. My proposition is that we make that half-time position a full-time position to use both halves to become full. And the second position is a half-time investigator position. And I believe they suggested a budget of $18 an hour. And I think county policy, that has to be 39.5 hours per week. No benefits in that position. So I'm asking for approval for those 2 positions.
Okay, and these are grant funded?
Are we going to be able, or are you going to be able to retain your half-time attorney, or is that, you're gonna just have to find somebody else?
So that person may be interested in the full-time position.
Great.
We have to outline the duties first.
Okay,
But
okay.
it makes no sense to have two half-time positions.
Correct.
It makes sense to have a full-time.
Yep,
Okay,
yep, I'm in favor of both those changes.
okay, that's fine. You okay, Bill? Okay, motion.
I move that we approve the request for the, this is Public Defense Council, but it's Public Defense Commission approved grant positions, changing a half-time attorney to a full-time attorney and adding the half-time investigator.
I second the motion. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, and the motion is carried. So we'll move on to item 8, 2020 position movements and salaries. Why don't we start, Ann, and we'll play it by ear as to whether we need to go into exec. Go right ahead.
Thank you. I'll do my best to not make us go into exec, given the time. I think each of you are aware that we've had some movement in positions within our office. Sadly, I had one of the leadership positions choose to leave, and, well, two, actually, a chief deputy and an office supervisor. Both those people have chosen to leave. I had a newer attorney, a workload-funded attorney, leave at the end of October. And most recently, I had a felony-level attorney give notice to go into private practice. That leaves me with 3 openings for attorneys, 2 felony-level attorneys. Additionally, I have 2 legal assistant or senior legal secretary positions open right now as well. Some of that is due to movement, some is due to people leaving, but it's all having a horrible impact on our office and will continue to do so. Specifically with regard to the attorneys, I have to reassign caseloads when somebody chooses to leave, and there's one less person to give cases to. I now have that ×3. It hurts when it's 2 felony people. I have been able to select somebody from within the office to take over the management type of position, a chief deputy position, and that person is being promoted effective as of Monday. So I need to fill that felony vacancy, so I still have 2 felony attorney vacancies. What I'm asking to do is to take a look at some of the wages that we have for our attorneys. The 2 chief deputy positions within the office right now make dollars more than people they supervise. And yet I've asked them to have different responsibilities. Last year, when we did the wage study, this problem came to light. And my understanding was that it would be taken care of this year. And I think they've been reclassed now as a chief deputy position. But I'm requesting that some of the money that we have be moved around to raise their wages. You'll see on the sheets that I've requested 2 different amounts, and that's because the chief deputy that continues forward with me has held that position for a while now, and so I think that person should make more than the newly promoted person. So that's my request with regard to the chief deputies. Do you want me to go through each set or one by one?
When you say each set,
The next.
go ahead.
The next portion has to do with AT2 attorneys that have additional responsibilities, and I'm asking for each of them to receive a bit of a bump up in wage so that there's some spread out and some reflection of what they're doing within the office.
Okay, why don't we do this? Start with, okay, which I think you did, start with chief deputies. Okay, so what are you proposing for them? And we're talking 2, is that correct?
I'm talking 2 positions. One of them, I think I requested
I'm looking at it here.
2,500, and the other one was 4,000, higher than their wage right now.
Yeah, and then this is also in our packet. It's a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet.
Did we get it?
I think it's in our
There you go. No.
electronic packet. I don't know that it was printed
It isn't printed in here, but it is electronic.
in our folder.
Do you need my hard copy?
I don't know why it's.
No, go ahead, keep it. I'm okay, because I'm looking at the matrix here for PD personnel changes. Go ahead.
Yep.
So you have 1 chief deputy, so you're proposing to increase the salary by $4,820. Did I get that
So
correct?
that's the loaded amount.
That's the loaded amount.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is the column that just gives you the straight.
Okay. Go ahead, Ann. And then the second one, you have a loaded amount of just over $3,000,
2,500 is the
2,500.
basic amount, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And the rationale?
The rationale behind that is both of those people have management type of responsibilities. I would love to pass on additional responsibilities to them. They make dollars more than the people they're supervising, and it feels unfair to ask more of them. I would love to have them take things off my plate, but it feels unfair if they're making the same as everybody else that's supervising. So I wanted to see some spread out, really want to give up some of the things that I handle. Not because I don't want to do it, but still because I'm
Okay, so when you say they're making dollars more than than their subordinates at the present time, how much, what are we talking about?
There are 3 other AT5s, 2 of whom make, I think, $400 to $600 less than the 2 supervisory positions.
Per year?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, jumping ahead, if I go to the bottom, what is the net change here?
Can I
Do you wanna
make
keep
sure I
going?
let you know that net change, and I don't know if Dina can speak to individually, but the net change has to
It's
do
58.
with
58, yeah.
where I'd rehire new people at a lower wage, and it has to do with the AT2s that I feel strongly need to be bumped up, and 2 assistants that I am asking for a small raise for as well. So that net amount has to do with all of my requests.
The 5883.
And that's the loaded amount. So I can walk you through the spreadsheet, maybe on like a high level, just, so I have
Yeah, go ahead,
arrows
go
at the
ahead.
far right. The green arrows mean that there's a decrease. The
Decrease,
blue
yep,
arrows
yep.
means that there's an increase.
Yep.
So your net loaded amount for operational tax dollars is the 5883. The items in blue are related to grant money, so that's already covered by the grant. But I've broken this into 3 sections. So the chief deputies, which Ann walked through, the second section has to do with AT2s. The lion's share of that's going to be a decrease because people are leaving and coming in at a lower rate. And then the bottom part is the admin section of that.
Yep.
Considering the movement in Ann's department absorbing 5883 over the course of the year, pretty much a slam dunk. So if you're good with these movements, I believe that the money's there.
Well, and the thing is, you're going to be able to more than cover it simply because of the savings, the salary savings from the people exiting and the delay effect of getting new people in. So the 5883 really, does that actually take into account that these positions are going to be left open for some period of time?
No, it just means going into FY '22,
ahead.
it's going to increase our bottom line, just like the VSO position, just like the tax accounting position. So we can cover them for '21 with savings, but coming
Yeah,
into
going into- that
budget
was my next
next year.
question.
So I look at it like, this is the same thing Barry went through when his number 2 retired. And this is what Ann is also doing. And so, to me, it's, I can support it based on movement within and the fact that, she can cover it. I do really hate mid-year changes, but you had no idea that she was gonna retire or leave.
Well, you've got 2. Is that
Yes, I
correct?
know.
2 resignations?
Well, 3 total attorney ones. I have the chief deputy, but I have a felony attorney who's been with us quite some time. That attorney has chosen to go into private practice. It happens. It still breaks my heart. It's somebody that I count on a lot. The office manager has chosen to leave along with the chief deputy. That was the assistant to that chief deputy, and so that left me a vacancy with an office manager. So it's just what I've seen in the years, even before I did this job when I was a deputy public defender, and before that when I was a deputy prosecutor, when you get one person leaving, for some reason, it kind of sprinkles out.
Mushrooms?
So now we've had several, I'm definitely,
And these can't be forecasted.
no, I
No.
would never have guessed, would never have guessed it.
Okay.
Sylvia, you have anything to add?
No.
Okay.
You're okay? I guess we don't need to ask Darren, do we? Okay. Bill? You're okay?
Yeah.
Motion?
I move that we approve the 2020 position movements and salaries as presented by the public defender.
Second the motion. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And the motion is carried. Thank you, Ann. Public comment? Hearing none. 12:24, meeting adjourned.